I was on the last day of a 2-week dream vacation when my neighbor called me, her voice trembling. "I don't want to scare you," she said, "but there was screaming coming from your house last night." My blood ran cold. I was thousands of miles away, but my sister was supposed to be there and she wasn't answering her phone. Let me back up and explain how I even got to this point. It starts with my house. Not just any house, but my house. The one I worked for over 7 years to afford. The one I saved every extra penny for, skipping vacations and dinners out and new clothes. I worked overtime shifts at the hospital where I'm a nurse practitioner. I took extra weekend shifts when my body was already exhausted. I picked up holiday hours when everyone else wanted to be with their families. All of it was for this house. When I finally closed on it 2 years ago, I cried in the empty living room. It was small, just a 2-bedroom cottage with a tiny yard, but it was mine. Every single inch of it belonged to me. No roommates, no landlords, no more temporary spaces where I couldn't even paint the walls without permission. This was my sanctuary. I spent months making it perfect. I painted the bedroom a soft lavender color that made me feel calm every time I walked in. I found a vintage reading chair at an estate sale and reupholstered it myself in a deep green velvet. I built bookshelves along one wall of the living room and filled them with all the books I've been collecting, but never had space to display properly. I hung sheer white curtains that let in the morning light but gave me privacy from the street. The garden was my biggest project. The yard had been neglected by the previous owners, just a patch of brown grass and weeds. I spent weekends digging out the old growth and planting new things. I put in lavender bushes along the fence. I planted tomatoes and herbs in raised beds I built myself. I added a small stone path that led to a bench under the one big tree in the corner. That bench became my favorite spot in the world. I'd sit there in the evenings with a book and a glass of wine, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly at peace. I adopted my cat, Mochi, from the shelter 6 months after moving in. He was a nervous orange tabby who had been returned twice by other adopters because he was too skittish. We understood each other. We both needed a safe space to finally relax. He'd curl up in my lap on that green velvet chair while I read, purring so loud I could barely concentrate. The house wasn't just my sanctuary anymore. It was ours. My friends would come over and comment on how calm they felt in my space, how everything felt intentional and peaceful. They didn't know the full weight of what that meant to me. They didn't understand that this house was the first place I'd ever lived that felt like it couldn't be taken away from me. After a childhood of instability and years of struggling to make ends meet, I had created something solid and safe. Then there's my sister, Jenna. She's 5 years younger than me, and I love her more than almost anything in this world. But loving Jenna has always been exhausting. Our childhood wasn't easy. Our parents divorced when I was 12 and she was 7. Mom struggled with depression and couldn't always take care of us properly. Dad moved 3 states away and sent checks, but not much else. I became Jenna's protector, her second mom in a lot of ways. I made sure she had lunch money and helped with homework and walked her to school. That pattern never really stopped. Even as adults, I was always the one cleaning up Jenna's messes. When she was 19, she moved in with a boyfriend after knowing him for 3 weeks. 2 months later, she called me crying because he'd stolen her rent money and disappeared. I drove 4 hours to help her move out and paid her security deposit on a new place. When she was 22, she got fired from her job at a retail store for showing up late too many times. I helped her with rent for 3 months while she looked for something new. The boyfriends were always a problem. Jenna had terrible taste in men. She was drawn to the ones who seemed exciting and spontaneous, which really meant unreliable and sometimes dangerous. There was Marcus, who got arrested for selling stolen electronics. There was Devin, who convinced her to max out a credit card on a business idea that never materialized. There was Tyler, who I'm pretty sure was cheating on her with at least 2 other women. Every time, Jenna would call me in tears. Every time I would help her pick up the pieces. Every time she would swear she'd learned her lesson and things would be different. And every time, a few months later, there would be a new crisis with a new guy. The money problems were just as constant. Jenna had never been good with finances. She'd get paid and immediately spend it on things she didn't need. New clothes, expensive dinners, concert tickets. Then she'd run short on rent and call me for a loan. I gave her money so many times I lost count. Sometimes she paid me back. Usually she didn't. I told myself it was okay because she was family and she needed help. But there was a part of me, a part that grew bigger over the years, that I had worked so hard to build stability in my life, and Jenna's chaos always threatened to pull me back into the mess we grew up in. I loved her, but I also started to resent her. I resented that she never seemed to learn. I resented that she always expected me to fix things. I resented that my hard-earned peace was constantly interrupted by her emergencies. My therapist, Dr. Chen, spent a lot of our sessions talking to me about boundaries. She said I couldn't save Jenna from herself. She said that constantly rescuing her was actually preventing her from growing up and learning to handle her own problems. I knew Dr. Chen was right. In my head, I understood it completely. But in my heart, I was still that 12-year-old girl who had promised to always take care of her little sister. So when Jenna called me 6 weeks ago, I should have seen it coming. I should have known better. But I wanted to believe things had changed. I wanted to believe she was doing better. She called on a Tuesday evening. I was watering my tomato plants when my phone rang. Her voice was sweet and casual. "Hey, Maya," she said. "How are you doing?" We chatted for a few minutes about nothing important. Then she got to the real reason for her call. "So I heard you're going to Italy," she said. "That's so exciting. You deserve it." I told her yes. I'd booked a 2-week trip, my first real vacation in years. I was leaving in 10 days. I'd saved up for it and planned every detail. Rome, Florence, the Amalfi Coast. I couldn't wait. "That's actually perfect timing," Jenna said. "I wanted to ask you a favor. I'm between apartments right now. My lease ended and the new place isn't ready until the end of the month. I was wondering if I could stay at your house while you're gone. I could pet sit for Mochi. You wouldn't have to worry about him at all." My stomach tightened. I loved the idea of someone checking on Mochi while I was away. I'd been planning to have my friend Sarah stop by every couple of days. But Jenna staying at my house? The thought made me nervous in a way I couldn't quite name. "What happened with your apartment?" I asked. "Why did your lease end?" There was a pause. Jenna's voice got a little defensive. "Nothing happened," she said. "I just decided not to renew. The rent was going up and I wanted to find something cheaper." "Where are your things?" I asked. "Oh, they're in storage," she said quickly. "I got a unit. It's fine. I just need a place to sleep for a couple of weeks." "It would really help me out, Maya. Please." I felt the familiar pull, the guilt, the sense that I was a bad sister if I said no. But I also felt resistance. My house was my sanctuary. I didn't want anyone in it, especially Jenna with her history of chaos. "I don't know," I said slowly. I was really looking forward to just unplugging and not worrying about anything. "If you stay there, you'd need to take care of Mochi properly. Feed him on schedule, clean his litter box, make sure he has fresh water." She jumped in immediately. "Of course. I'll take perfect care of him. I promise, Maya. You won't have to worry about a thing. And no guests," I said. The words came out firm. No parties, no friends over, no boyfriends. "Are you seeing anyone right now?" "No," she said. "I'm totally single. Taking a break from dating, actually. It'll just be me and Mochi." We'll have a quiet couple of weeks. I'll watch Netflix and relax. That's it. Something still felt off to me, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And the guilt was strong. Here I was, going on an expensive vacation to Italy, and my sister needed a place to stay. How could I say no? What kind of person would that make me? I said. But I'm serious about the rules, Jenna. No one else in my house. Take good care of Mochi and please, please keep the place clean. She squealed with happiness. Thank you so much, Maya. You're the best sister in the world. I promise I won't let you down. I gave her my spare key 3 days before I left. I showed her where everything was for Mochi. I wrote down his feeding schedule and his vet's phone number just in case. I told her again about the no-guess rule. She hugged me and promised she understood. The morning I left for the airport, I felt a little knot of anxiety in my stomach. I walked through my house one more time, looking at everything I'd built. My peaceful bedroom, my cozy reading chair, my organized kitchen. I petted Mochi and told him I'd be back soon. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jenna would be fine. Everything would be fine. The flight to Italy was long but exciting. I slept a little, watched movies, and felt the stress of work and daily life start to melt away. When I landed in Rome, it was early morning, and the light was golden and beautiful. I took a taxi to my small hotel and felt like I'd entered another world. The first week was magical. I wandered through ancient ruins and ate pasta that made me want to cry. It was so good. I drank wine in little cafes and didn't check my work email once. I bought a new journal and wrote in it every evening, processing feelings and thoughts I'd been too busy to examine. I started to feel like myself again. Not Maya the nurse, not Maya the sister who fixes everything, just Maya. I texted Jenna a few times to check in. How's Mochi? Everything okay? She always responded quickly. Everything's great. He's so sweet. House is perfect. Have fun. Her messages were brief but seemed fine. I let myself relax and trust her. The second week, I took a train down to the Amalfi Coast. The views were stunning. Colorful houses stacked up on cliffs overlooking the bright blue sea. I hiked and swam and read books on the beach. I met other travelers and had long conversations over dinner about life and dreams and places we wanted to see. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. On my last full day, I was in a small town called Positano. I'd spent the morning walking through the narrow streets and shopping for gifts to bring home. In the afternoon, I sat down at a cafe with a view of the water. I ordered an espresso and a pastry and pulled out my journal. I was writing about how grateful I felt for this trip, how renewed I felt when my phone rang. The number was from back home. Mrs. Gable, my neighbor. She was a sweet woman in her 70s who lived next door and loved to garden. We'd had many conversations over the fence about the best way to grow tomatoes. I liked her a lot, but we'd never talked on the phone before. A call from her while I was in Italy seemed strange. "Hello?" I answered. Mrs. Gable's voice was shaky and worried. "Maya, dear, I'm so sorry to bother you on your vacation. I wasn't sure if I should call, but I thought you'd want to know." My heart started to beat faster. "Know what? What's wrong?" "It's about your house," she said. "There was a terrible commotion last night. Screaming, Maya. Awful screaming. It sounded like someone was in real trouble. I heard a woman's voice yelling for help and then a man's voice, very angry. There was crashing like furniture being thrown. It went on for several minutes and then suddenly everything went quiet. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. The beautiful view in front of me suddenly felt fake and far away." "What?" I said. "Are you sure it was my house?" She sighed. "I'm sure, dear. I know the sound of where things are on our street. It was definitely coming from your place. I almost called the police right away, but then I worried I might be overreacting. But the screaming was so desperate, Maya. So frightened. Did you see anything?" I asked. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. No, she said. It was around midnight. I looked out my window, but I couldn't see much. There was a car in your driveway that I didn't recognize. A dark sedan, maybe blue or black. After everything went quiet, I waited about 20 minutes and then I did call the police. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What did they say? I asked. They came by, she said. 2 officers. They knocked on your door for a while, but no one answered. They shined flashlights in the windows, but didn't see any movement. They told me that without someone answering the door or visible evidence of a crime, they couldn't force entry. They said if I heard anything else to call back. But since then, nothing. The house has been completely dark and silent. My hands were shaking. Is my sister's car there? I asked. Jenna is staying at my place to watch my cat. Mrs. Gable paused. I haven't seen any car there since yesterday afternoon, she said. Like I said, the house looks empty now. Maya, I really think something bad happened. I'm worried about your sister. I'm coming home, I said immediately. I'll get the next flight I can. Thank you for calling me, Mrs. Gable. Please. If you see or hear anything else, call the police again right away. Of course, dear, she said. I'm so sorry to bring you bad news. Please be safe. I hung up and immediately tried to call Jenna. The phone rang once and then went to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I sent a text with trembling fingers. Where are you? Mrs. Gable called. I'm worried. The message showed as delivered but not read. I called again. Voicemail. I texted again. Jenna, please answer me. Are you okay? What happened at the house? Still nothing. I tried 5 more times, then 10. My calls went straight to voicemail now, like her phone had been turned off. I paid for my coffee and stumbled back to my hotel in a daze. My mind was spinning with terrible possibilities. Had there been a break-in? Was Jenna hurt? Had someone attacked her? Why wasn't she answering? The guilt crashed over me in waves. I shouldn't have left. I shouldn't have let her stay there. If something had happened to her, it was my fault. Back in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and searched for flights. The next one out wasn't until tomorrow morning. I booked it without even looking at the price. Then, I tried calling Jenna again. Nothing. I called Sarah, my friend who lived nearby. She didn't answer either. I left her a frantic voicemail asking her to drive by my house and see if everything looked okay. The rest of that day and night were torture. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just sat in my hotel room, trying Jenna's phone over and over and checking my messages constantly. Sarah finally texted me back at around 10 p.m., my time. Just drove by your place. Looks dark and quiet. No cars in the driveway. Want me to go knock? I told her yes, please. 20 minutes later, she texted again. No answer at the door. I rang the bell a bunch of times. Your cat was in the window looking at me, but I didn't see any people. Do you want me to use your spare key to go in? Check on Mochi? I realized Jenna had my spare key. Sarah didn't have one. I told her I'd be home tomorrow and would check everything then. I thanked her for trying. I don't think I slept more than an hour that night. I kept thinking about what Mrs. Gable had described. The screaming, the crashing, the sudden silence. I imagined 100 different scenarios, each one worse than the last. Jenna attacked by an intruder. Jenna in a fight with someone she'd brought to my house despite promising not to. Jenna hurt, unconscious, alone in my house while I was thousands of miles away and helpless. The flight the next morning felt endless. I had to take a train to Rome first. Then the flight was over 10 hours. I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to watch movies but couldn't follow the plots. I tried to read, but the words swam in front of my eyes. I just stared at the seat in front of me and willed the plane to go faster. I kept thinking about Jenna as a little girl, how she used to have nightmares and would crawl into my bed in the middle of the night, how I'd stroke her hair until she fell back asleep, how small and vulnerable she'd seemed, how I'd promised her I'd always keep her safe. Some protector I turned out to be. I'd let her stay at my house, and now she was missing and possibly hurt. When we finally landed, I turned my phone off airplane mode immediately. No new messages from Jenna, no missed calls. I tried calling her again, but her phone was still off. I grabbed my bag from the overhead bin and pushed through the crowded aisle, desperate to get off the plane. I didn't wait for my checked luggage. I just headed straight outside and got in line for a taxi. The wait felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. Finally, I was in a cab, giving the driver my address, offering him extra money if he could hurry. The drive from the airport to my house normally took about 40 minutes. Every single minute felt like an eternity. I watched the familiar streets go by and felt a surreal disconnect. Just yesterday morning, I'd been having breakfast overlooking the Mediterranean. Now, I was rushing home to some kind of disaster I didn't understand. My peaceful vacation felt like it had happened to someone else in another lifetime. When we turned onto my street, my heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I stared at my house as we approached. The lights were all off. There was no car in the driveway. From the outside, everything looked normal. The garden looked fine. The front door was closed. But Mrs. Gable was right. Something felt wrong. The house felt empty in a way I could sense even from the street. I paid the driver and got out. My legs felt shaky as I walked up the front path. I got my keys out and noticed my hand was trembling. I unlocked the door and pushed it open slowly. The house was dark and silent and cold. The air felt stale, like no one had opened a window in days. Mochi came running up to me immediately, meowing loudly. He wound around my ankles and kept crying. I bent down to pet him and felt how thin he was. His food bowl in the kitchen was completely empty. His water bowl was nearly dry. The litter box smelled terrible, like it hadn't been cleaned in days. Anger started to mix with my fear and worry. Whatever had happened, Jenna had left and abandoned my cat. I fed Mochi first and gave him fresh water. He ate frantically, poor thing. Then I walked through the house slowly, turning on lights as I went. The living room looked mostly normal, but something was off. My reading chair had been moved slightly. There were water rings on my coffee table like someone had set down glasses without using coasters. The rug was rucked up in one corner. The kitchen was worse. There were dirty dishes piled in the sink, something I never did. Cabinet doors were hanging open. One of my favorite glasses, a blue vintage one I'd found at a flea market, was shattered on the floor near the refrigerator. I stared at the pieces and felt a wave of violation. That glass had been special to me. In the hallway, a framed photo that normally hung on the wall was on the floor. The glass was cracked. The frame was bent. I picked it up carefully and saw it was a picture of me and Jenna from 5 years ago, both of us smiling at a family barbecue. Looking at our happy faces made my chest hurt. I walked toward the guest bedroom where Jenna had been staying. The door was half open. I pushed it wider and turned on the light. The room was a mess. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled and half falling onto the floor. Clothes were everywhere. The closet door was open and more clothes were spilling out. Drawers were pulled open with items hanging out like someone had packed in a huge hurry. The nightstand drawer was open too. I walked over and saw makeup, hair ties, receipts, random junk. Then I noticed the corner of something sticking out from under the mattress. I pulled it out and found a stack of papers folded together. I unfolded them and my blood went cold. They were letters printed on plain paper. Each one was a demand for money. The language was threatening and crude. You owe us $3,000. You have 1 week to pay or we start adding interest. You can't hide from us. We know where your sister lives. That last line made me feel sick. They knew about me. They knew where I lived. Because of Jenna. The letters were dated over the past month. The amounts escalated: 3,000, then 4,000, then 5,000 with late fees and interest. The most recent one was from a week ago. Final warning: pay up or face consequences. We're done playing games. I sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to process what I was reading. Jenna owed money to someone dangerous. She'd known about it before she even asked to stay at my house. She'd lied about why she needed a place to stay. She wasn't between apartments. She was hiding. And she'd brought these people's threats right to my doorstep. I looked around the room with new eyes, searching for more information. I checked the other drawers and found a phone pushed to the back of one, a cheap burner phone. I turned it on and waited for it to boot up. When the screen lit up, I saw dozens of text messages. I opened the thread and started reading. The messages were between Jenna and someone saved in her contacts as just the letter C. The conversation made my stomach turn. C. Found out where you're staying. Nice little house your sister has. Jenna. Leave me alone. I'll get you the money. C. You said that last month. I'm tired of waiting. Jenna. I need more time, please. C. I'm coming to talk to you in person. Tonight. Jenna. No, don't come here. We can meet somewhere else. C. Too late. I'm already on my way. The timestamp on that last message was from 2 nights ago, around 11 p.m., right before Mrs. Gable would have heard the screaming. I kept scrolling, but there were no messages after that. I felt hot rage building inside me. Jenna had invited this. She'd known this person was dangerous and was threatening her, and she'd stayed at my house anyway. She'd let this C person find her here. She'd let my home become the location for whatever had happened that night. I went back to the kitchen, still holding the burner phone. I looked around more carefully now. The overturned lamp in the living room, the shattered glass, the cracked picture frame, the rucked-up rug. These weren't signs of someone being careless. They were signs of a fight. On the kitchen counter, I finally saw what I'd been dreading. A piece of paper torn from a notebook, covered in Jenna's messy handwriting. My hands shook as I picked it up and started to read. Maya, I'm so sorry. I know you're going to be so angry, and you have every right to be. I lied to you. I wasn't just between apartments. I was hiding. I owe money to some bad people, and I didn't know where else to go. I thought if I stayed at your place for a couple weeks, I could figure something out and they wouldn't find me. But C found me. He's my ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago. I thought we were done, but I made some mistakes and ended up owing him money. He tracked me down here. He came over 2 nights ago and we got into a huge fight. He was so angry, Maya. He scared me. Things got physical. He grabbed me and I pushed him, and we both fell. That's when the lamp broke. I was screaming because I was terrified. Mrs. Gable must have heard because the police came by. C and I hid in the bedroom and stayed quiet until they left. Then C said we needed to leave because the cops would come back. We both left that night. I'm staying with him now because I don't have anywhere else to go. I know that sounds crazy, but he calmed down and promised he just wants me to pay him back, and then we'll be even. I know I messed up your house. I know I broke your trust. I know I put you in danger by bringing my problems to your home. I'm a terrible sister. I don't deserve your help. I'm so sorry about Mochi. I meant to come back and take care of him, but C won't let me leave right now. Please don't call the police. If they get involved, it will make everything worse for me. C will get even angrier, and I'll never be able to pay him back. I just need a little more time to sort this out. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I'll pay for anything that got broken. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you. Please forgive me. Jenna. I read the note 3 times. With each reading, I felt my emotions cycle through shock, hurt, anger, fear, and then finally a cold, clear resolve. This was it. This was the line Jenna had finally crossed that I couldn't excuse or enable. She hadn't just lied to me, she'd endangered me. She'd brought a violent criminal to my home. She'd let him learn where I lived. She'd allowed my sanctuary, the place I'd worked so hard to build, to become a crime scene. She'd abandoned my cat to starve. And now, she was asking me to stay quiet about it to protect herself. The part of the note that made me angriest was the end. I'm staying with him now. C won't let me leave right now. Jenna was with the man who just violently attacked her. She was making excuses for him. She was falling into the same pattern she always did, choosing a dangerous man over her own safety, and expecting me to somehow fix it later. But the request to not call the police was what really decided things for me. That was Jenna asking me to prioritize her bad decisions over my own safety. She wanted me to just let this go, to pretend a violent man didn't now know where I lived and that my home hadn't been the scene of an assault. I stood in my kitchen, in my violated sanctuary, and felt something shift inside me. Dr. Chen had been right. I couldn't save Jenna from herself. And, more importantly, I had to save myself from the wreckage Jenna kept creating. I picked up my phone and made a call. Not to Jenna, but to a 24-hour locksmith service. I told them I needed every lock in my house changed immediately and that it was an emergency. They said they could have someone out within 2 hours. I paid the emergency fee without hesitation. Then I called the security company I'd been considering using for months, but had put off because of the cost. I told them I wanted their best system installed as soon as possible. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. They said they could come out for an assessment the next morning. I booked it. I spent the next hour cleaning up the evidence of what had happened. I swept up the broken glass. I straightened the furniture. I did 3 loads of laundry from the guest room. I scrubbed the kitchen until it shined. With each task, I felt more in control. This was my house. I was taking it back. The locksmith arrived and changed every lock. The front door, the back door, the side gate. I watched him work and felt safer with each new key he handed me. No one could enter my sanctuary without my permission anymore. That night, I barely slept again, but for different reasons. I wasn't worried about Jenna anymore. I was angry. I lay in my bed looking at the lavender walls I'd so carefully painted and felt the weight of all the years I'd spent cleaning up her messes. I thought about all the money I'd lent her, all the times I dropped everything to help her, all the emotional energy I'd poured into trying to help her make better choices. And she'd repaid me by turning my home into a battlefield and abandoning my cat. In the morning, I got up early and made coffee. I fed Mochi and sat with him in my lap for a long time, petting him and apologizing for leaving him with someone so irresponsible. The security company came at 9 and spent hours installing the new system. Cameras on the front door, back door, and garage, motion sensors on the windows, a control panel I could monitor from my phone. It was expensive, but worth every penny. When they left, I sat down at my kitchen table with the burner phone, the threatening letters, and Jenna's note. I read through everything again, taking photos with my phone as documentation. Then I drove to the police station. The officer at the front desk directed me to someone who could take a report. Detective Harris was a tired-looking woman in her 40s who listened to my story without interrupting. I showed her the letters, the phone, the photos I'd taken of my damaged house. I explained about the screaming Mrs. Gable had heard and the fight that had happened. "Can you tell me your sister's current location?" Detective Harris asked. I shook my head. "I don't know." She said in the note she's staying with her ex-boyfriend C, but I don't know his full name or address. The detective made notes. "We can try to track her down to make sure she's safe, but given that she left of her own accord, there's not much we can do if she doesn't want help. However, we can file a report for trespassing and threats against this individual C if we can identify him. We can also keep the threatening letters on file in case these loan sharks escalate." "That's what I want," I said firmly. "I want it documented that this person was in my home and made threats." I want a record of what happened. If he comes back or contacts me, I want to be able to show that there's already a police report." The detective nodded and continued taking down all the information. She kept the burner phone and the letters as evidence. When I left the police station 2 hours later, I felt lighter. I'd done what I needed to do to protect myself. I'd stopped prioritizing Jenna's chaos over my own safety. Back at home, I sat down and composed a text to Jenna. I rewrote it several times, deleting angry words and accusations. Finally, I settled on something clear and firm. "Jenna, I know what you did. I found the letters, the phone, and your note. I've changed all the locks and installed a security system. I've also filed a police report about C and the threats made against me. I did this to protect myself, which is something I should have prioritized a long time ago. Do not contact me again until you decide to get real help. Not help from me, but professional help. Therapy, financial counseling, whatever it takes for you to stop this pattern of chaos and bad decisions. I love you, but I can't keep enabling you to hurt yourself and the people around you. I hope you find your way to a better life, but I can't be part of your journey anymore unless you do the real work to change. Maya." I read it over 3 times. Then I hit send. The message showed as delivered. I watched for a moment to see if Jenna would read it or respond. Nothing. I went into my phone settings and blocked her number. Then I blocked her on social media. I felt a pang of sadness, but also relief. I'd finally done what Dr. Chen had been encouraging me to do for years. I'd set a real boundary and enforced it. The next few days were strange. I took time off work to recover from the trip and to settle back into my house. I kept expecting Jenna to show up at my door or find a way to contact me through a friend. But there was nothing. Just silence. Part of me worried about where she was and if she was safe. But I reminded myself that Jenna was an adult who made her own choices. I couldn't force her to choose better. I could only control my own reactions. I spent those days reclaiming my space. I deep cleaned every room. I bought a new reading lamp to replace the one that had been broken. I found a new vintage glass at an antique store to replace the one that had shattered. I sat on my bench in the garden and felt the peace slowly returning. Mochi stayed close to me, sensing that things were settling back to normal. Mrs. Gable came over one afternoon with a plate of cookies and an apology for having to make that phone call. I thanked her and told her I was grateful she'd reached out. I explained that my sister had been staying at the house and had gotten into some trouble, but that everything was resolved now. She patted my hand and said she was glad I was home safe. 2 weeks after I'd returned, Sarah came over for dinner. We sat in my kitchen drinking wine, and I told her the whole story. She listened with wide eyes and then shook her head. "Maya, I'm proud of you," she said. "I know that must have been so hard, but you did the right thing. Jenna needed consequences, not another rescue." I nodded and felt tears prick my eyes. "It was hard," I admitted. "It still is. She's my sister. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep her warm." A month passed, then 2. I went back to work and fell into my normal routines. The house felt safe again. The security system gave me peace of mind. I started sleeping through the night again. Mochi put his weight back on and returned to his normal, purring self. I went to therapy and processed everything with Dr. Chen. She told me I'd made a breakthrough and that she was proud of the boundary I'd set. I thought about Jenna often. I wondered where she was and what she was doing. I hoped she was safe. I hoped she'd eventually realize she needed to change. But I also accepted that her journey wasn't mine to control or fix. I'd spent so many years thinking that love meant sacrifice and rescue. Now I understood that real love sometimes meant stepping back and letting someone face the consequences of their choices. One evening, I was sitting in my green velvet chair with Mochi in my lap and a book in my hands. The lavender bedroom walls glowed softly in the lamplight. My garden was blooming outside the window. The house was quiet and peaceful and safe. This was my sanctuary and I had protected it. Not just the physical space, but the emotional peace I'd worked so hard to build. I thought about the phone call from Mrs. Gable that had shattered my vacation. I thought about the panic and fear of rushing home. I thought about finding my house violated and my trust broken. It had been one of the worst experiences of my life. But it had also been the push I needed to finally, truly put myself first. My sister had brought a violent criminal into my home and then asked for my silence. She'd prioritized her own immediate comfort over my safety and peace. And I'd made the hard choice to prioritize myself, to set a boundary that might have felt harsh but was actually the most loving thing I could do for both of us. I'd shown Jenna that her actions have consequences, and I'd shown myself that I was worth protecting. Did I still feel guilty sometimes? Yes. Did I still worry about her? Of course. Did I wonder if I'd been too harsh? Occasionally, but mostly, I felt at peace with my decision. I'd reclaimed my sanctuary. I'd stopped enabling destruction. I'd chosen my own safety and well-being, and that felt like the right choice, even when it was the hard one. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments below.